Between the working class and the capitalist class, there is an irrepressible conflict, a class struggle for life. No glib-tongued politician can vault over it, no capitalist professor or official statistician can argue it away, no capitalist parson can veil it, no labor faker can straddle it, no reform architect can bridge it over. It crops up in all manner of ways, like in this strike, in ways that disconcert all the plans and all the schemes of those who would deny or ignore it. Thus you perceive that the theory on which your pure and simple trade organizations are grounded and on which you went into this strike is false. There being no common interests, but only hostile interests between the capitalist class and the working class, the battle you are waging to establish safe relations between the two is a hopeless one. Put to the touchstone of these undeniable principles the theory upon which your pure and simple trade organizations are built, and you will find it to be false. Examined by the light of these undeniable principles, the road that your false theory makes you travel and the failures that have marked your career must strike you as its inevitable result. Let us take a condensed page of the country's history. For the sake of plainness, and forced to it by the exigency of condensation, I shall assume small figures. Place yourselves back a sufficient number of years with but 10 competing weaving concerns in the community. How the individual 10 owners came by the original accumulations that enabled them to start as capitalists you now know. Say that each of the 10 capitalists employs 10 men, that each man receives $2 a day, and that the product of each of the 10 sets of men in each of the 10 establishments is worth $40 a day. You know now also that it is out of these $40 worth of wealth produced by the men that each of the 10 competing capitalists takes the $20 that he pays the 10 men in wages, and that out of that same $40 worth of wealth, he takes the $20 that he pockets as profits. His men spontaneously draw themselves together and refuse to work. They go on strike. What is the situation? In those days, it needed skill acquired by long training to do the work. There may have been corner loafers out of work, but not weavers. Possibly at some great distance, there may have been weavers actually obtainable, but in those days there was neither telegraph nor railroad to communicate with them. Finally, the 9 competitors of number 1, having no strike on hand, continued to produce and thus threatened to crowd num 1 out of the market. Thus circumstanced, num 1 caves in. He withdraws his order of wage reduction. "Come in," he says to his striking workmen, "let's make up. Labor and capital are brothers. The most loving of brothers sometimes fall out. We have had such a falling out, it was a slip. You have organized yourselves in a union with a $2 a day wage scale. I shall never fight the union. I love it. Come back to work." And the men did. Aid comes to him through the mail. The letter carrier brings him a circular from a machine shop. Such circulars are frequent even today. It reads like this: "Mr. Num 1, you are employing 10 men. I have in my machine shop a beautiful machine with which you can produce with 5 men twice as much as now with 10. This machine does not chew tobacco. It does not smoke. Some of these circulars are cruel and add this machine has no wife who gets sick and keeps it home to attend to her. It has no children who die and whom to bury it must stay away from work. It never goes on strike. It works and grumbles not. Come and see it." Right here, let me lock a switch at which not a few people are apt to switch off and be banked. Some may think, well, at least that machine capitalist is entitled to his profits. He surely is an inventor, a grave error. Look into the history of our inventors and you will see that those who really profited by their genius are so few that you can count them on the fingers of your hands and have fingers to spare. The capitalists either take advantage of the inventor's stress and buy his invention for a song. The inventor believes he can make his haul with his next invention, but before that is perfected, he is as poor as before and the same advantage is again taken of him. Until finally, his brain power being exhausted, he sinks into a pauper's grave, leaving the fruit of his genius for private capitalists to grow rich on. Or the capitalist simply steals the invention and gets his courts to decide against the inventor. From Eli Whitney down, that is the treatment the inventor, as a rule, receives from the capitalist class. Such a case, illustrative of the whole situation, happened recently. The Bonsack Machine Company discovered that its employees made numerous inventions, and it decided to appropriate them wholesale. To this end, it locked out its men and demanded of all applicants for work that they sign a contract whereby, in consideration of employment, they assign to the company all their rights in whatever invention they may make during the term of their employment. One of these employees, who had signed such a contract, informed the company one day that he thought he could invent a machine by which cigarettes could be held closed by crimping at the ends instead of pasting. This was a valuable idea, and he was told to go ahead. For 6 months he worked at this invention and perfected it, and having during all that time received not a cent in wages or otherwise from the company, he patented his invention himself. The company immediately brought suit against him in the federal courts, claiming that the invention was its property, and the federal court decided in favor of the company, thus robbing the inventor of his time, his money, of the fruit of his genius, and of his unquestionable rights. To return to number 1, he goes and sees the machine, finds it to be as represented, buys it, puts it up in his shop, picks out of his 10 men the 5 least active in the late strike, sets them to work at $2 a day as before, and full of bows and smirks addresses the other 5 thus: "I'm sorry I have no places for you. I believe in union principles and am paying the union scale to the 5 men I need. I don't need you now. Goodbye, I hope I'll see you again," and he means this last, as you will presently perceive. What is the situation now? No one pays as before $2 a day, but to only 5 men. These, with the aid of the machine, now produce twice as much as the 10 did before. Their product is now $80 worth of wealth. As only $10 of this goes in wages, the capitalist has a profit of $70 a day, or 250% more. We now have a sufficient survey of the field to enable us to answer the question, how shall we organize so as not to fight the same old hopeless battle? Proceeding from the knowledge that labor alone produces all wealth, that less and less of this wealth comes to the working class and more of it is plundered by the idle class or capitalist. That this is the result of the working class being stripped of the tool, machine, without which it cannot earn a living. And finally, that the machine or tool has reached such a state of development that it can no longer be operated by the individual, but needs the collective effort of many. Proceeding from this knowledge, it is clear that the aim of all intelligent class-conscious workingmen must be the overthrow of the system of private ownership in the tools of production, because that system keeps them in wage slavery. When crowded in argument to the wall by us new trade unionists, by us of the Socialist Trade and Labor Alliance, your present or old and pure and simple organizations yield the point of ultimate aims. They grant the ultimate necessity of establishing socialism, but they claim the times are not yet ripe for that. And not yet being ripe, they lay emphasis upon the claim that the pure and simple union does the workers some good now by getting something now from the employers and from the capitalist parties. We are not practical, they tell us. They are. Let us test this theory on the spot. Here in New Bedford, there is not yet a single new trade unionist organization in existence. The pure and simple trade union has had the field all to itself. All of you whose wages are now higher than they were 5 years ago, kindly raise a hand. All of you whose wages are now lower than 5 years ago, please raise a hand. The proof of the pudding lies in the eating.